Storage offers U-Haul and U-Box services, storage units, boxes, packing supplies, propane refills, and more. Ames can help you with almost any items you need to move and or store at their safe and secure storage facility. Did you know that Ames Self-Storage is also an authorized UPS, FedEx, and USPS shipping facility? They can find you the best shipping options for all your packages at their Pack and Ship store. For more information, call 607-324-2825 or visit their website at amesselfstorage.com.
Here we go. Thanks for your patience.
Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
We are now joined by Canisteo resident and Steuben County Republican Chairman Assembly candidate Joe Sempolinski. We spent much of the day together yesterday touring the storm-damaged areas, the damage from Debby in Canisteo, Woodhull, Greenwood, Jasper. Joe Sempolinski, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure to be on the show.
Joe Sempolinski, where do we start? Canisteo. There was one house, I believe a mobile home, that had been for sale, according to Eric Rose, the Steuben County Public Works Commissioner. It had been for sale and then was knocked down into the river. Describe that for our listeners, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, the area to the southeast of the village was the part of Canisteo that seemed to have the greatest damage. It's a farming area. It's where Dennis Creek and Colonel Bill's Creek touch the Canisteo River, big flat valley, for those of you who know the area, just south of the village. And the farms there were particularly hard hit, and lots of property damage. And what you're specifically referring to was a home that I believe was along Route 36 that got swept across that entire field, which is quite a distance, and ends up in the Canisteo River against the county bridge with a lot of other debris. Now, thankfully, all reports are that was an unoccupied home that was for sale. If somebody had been in that home, I don't see how it would have been survivable. And again, thankfully, we're at this point, it looks like, talking about property damage in Steuben County, not loss of life in Steuben County. But it just shows you how lucky we were in a couple different ways. One, that particular property could have easily been a serious injury, or even more likely, in my opinion, a death. Somebody had been in the home at that time. And then the levee system to the south of the village, there was some overtopping, but there was not a levee breach. There was not overtopping that lasted for a large period of time. So you have south of the village extensive property damage, but it could have been the village, a much more densely populated area that took the brunt of that if the levee system had not been in place or had breached or had more fully overtopped. The storm had lingered a little bit longer. We were dealing with a very bad situation, but thankfully it's a bad situation where we're not talking about loss of life, and there were some of the effects in some areas that were mitigated. But yeah, if you were in the Willow Bend area to the southeast of the village, it was extensive damage to those homes, extensive damage to the farms that were in that area.
Joseph Belinsky, the Steuben County Public Works Commissioner Eric Rose, I spoke with him, and I said to him, which town had it the worst? And Rose said, it just depends on what type of damage you're talking. It was all the towns that were affected were all kind of equally so badly damaged. And he talked about, well, let's play a soundbite. I've got Eric Rose right here. Let's hear what he had to say.
Yeah, we've been to all those locations. Similar situation, a lot of silt, a lot of overflow, a lot of mud, a lot of damage, elevated waters, a lot of personal property damage, trees, infrastructure with power lines, gas lines exposed. So quite a bit of stuff. Yes, similar in all those locations.
And that's his take on it. Similar in all of those locations. He was talking about Woodhull, Addison, and Canisteo. When we went to the governor's press conference, she gave it off of Route 36, almost in South Canisteo, by the Bush Hill turn. The destruction there, quite enormous. We talked with Jen from Canisteo, and she talked about, well, we have sound of that as well. Let's pull that up.
Our full kitchen is gone. It's spread out for about a quarter mile down 36, and in the fields, there's mud and trees everywhere. Windows blew out. A lot of before the water came through, a lot of wind kind of took off our barn roof and stuff before any of that even happened, and it was just total devastation. And walking in there, there was probably about 5 feet of water. You can see some stains up the wall, and I'm just looking at all of our children's stuff covered in mud and the complete devastation. I now actually understand that word. We see it, we hear it, but until you actually experience it, you'll never be able to understand it. And like I said, I'm just thankful, and just brought me to tears to see my kids' stuff covered and gone and spread out throughout Canisteo. But just seeing
Joe Sempolinski, I don't know if you were there for the governor's press conference and saw that particular damage there at the corner of 36 and Bush Hill in the town of Canisteo. But there's just one example of that was, one example after another of the devastation that we saw yesterday.
Yeah, no, I was not invited to the governor's press conference, but you're absolutely right. This is sadly typical of what we were seeing yesterday, and you talk about the differences between the different towns. I think it was more a difference of type of damage than severity of damage. If you're in the town of Canisteo, you're talking about a lot of property damage, a lot of farm damage. If you were in Jasper, there was certainly some of that, and there were some folks in the low-lying parts of the hamlet that had their homes severely damaged. But the most important part of what happened in Jasper was the school. And the school had been hit in 2021. It was still not yet reopened. The high school kids have been going to Greenwood for 3 years, and it was a very, very similar event 2-3 years ago, and was able to see where Tuscarora Creek had overflowed its banks and gone into the school yet again. So that is obviously one of the major centers of the Jasper-Troupsburg community, is that high school, and it's been hard on them to not have their kids in the school for 3 years, and I think that is going to extend even much longer now. And then in Woodhull, you're talking about sort of small business damage, because in Woodhull, the Tuscarora Creek runs right through the heart of the hamlet, and when it overflows, it hits the businesses in the business district. And we were able to see businesses there was one business that had just opened prior to the 2021 event, got hit again. And so I would characterize it as what type of property or what sort of area of the community happened to be in the path of the water lended itself to what the damage was in different communities. But it was certainly, I would think, very severe property damage, and as the lady said, devastation in all 3 of those particular communities, which I was able to visit yesterday.
Talking to Steuben County GOP Chair Joe Sempolinski, who lives in Canisteo. You remember when we went through Greenwood? I don't know what the word is for it. The way the road was caved in almost looked like a huge sinkhole. It happened too quickly, obviously, to be erosion. There was a road and a bridge.
Like the bank of the turn was sort of wiped out, and you didn't lose about half the road of the town road.
Yeah, half the road was gone because of the embankment fell in there. It was quite the sight to see. Assemblyman Joe Giglio and I and Steuben County Public Works Commissioner Eric Rose were all talking about it, getting pictures of it. The devastation so bad. Steuben County Emergency Services had Tim Marshall, by the way, and made a big point of saying, for property damage issues, please call 211 and they'll keep a record of it. 911 is more for the severe emergency situations that are happening immediately.
There's an important point there, and it was one that was made by all government officials yesterday, is the way that emergency relief happens is you have to hit, according to the law, both state and federal law, you have to hit certain thresholds as far as damage for it to register for relief. So it's important, actually, not only for perhaps somebody's individual insurance claim or something like that, but it's important for the community that all of the damage is documented, not only in the areas we're talking about, but in all parts of the state. So if you're somebody that maybe you were the only person on your road that, had your garage, have a flood or something like that, it's still important to document that. It's still important to report that because it's important that the state as a whole hits the particular threshold that they need to hit as far as damage to trigger the relief that can come from the various state and federal agencies.
Going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment with Steuben County GOP Chair Joe Sempolinski. Stay with us. Newsmaker Show also brought to you by the Classy Cafe on Main Street in Hornell. Number to call to order ahead, and they're open right now for breakfast, 607-661-4854. Here's Mary's specials for today. Crispy chicken Parmesan panini with French fries. Peach and feta cheese specialty tossed salad with grilled or crispy chicken. Soup of the day down at Classy Cafe, cheddar broccoli soup. We are back with Steuben County GOP Chair Joe Sempolinski. Joe, it seemed like the government officials, and I'm talking everyone from Governor Kathy Hochul to Congressman Nick Langworthy, to you and Assemblyman Joe Giglio, Senator O'Mara, all the DOT guys and the crews. You can mention all the different crews over there. There was one truck I didn't recognize. We saw a lot of white trucks come by, and it had that company name on it. It seemed like it was outside the area. It wasn't, NYSEG that I saw that particular time. A lot of people.
That was Long Island utility truck, if I remember correctly.
Was that what that was from? Okay, so that was something that Albany, the governor, sent up. Your thoughts, Joe Sempolinski, on you got Congressman Nick Langworthy, who came from Buffalo, the governor from Albany. You had Joe Giglio, who's, not running again, coming in from, where does he live, Tonawanda?
Gowanda. He lives in Gowanda.
So a lot of people coming in from a lot of places, and a lot of crews coming in from a lot of places. We're talking, can you name some of them?
Well, we had, on the tour I was on, we had, the congressman, the senator, the assemblyman. We had folks from the county, from the village, from the towns. We had every level of government. And what has been good so far is I have not seen sort of a lack of communication, especially, it's more important, not the elected officials, but the actual emergency services. From everything I was hearing on Friday, the actual day of the storm, and I've heard since that the emergency response was very well coordinated from the volunteer firemen on the ground and the county sort of dispatching it, and then of course obviously the state coming in trying to bring in resources. I have not heard of any sort of territorial fights or miscommunications or anything like that.
Yeah, everybody really did just so much work, and the outpouring of a concern and help, it was quite noticeable. I think that
this is something where these type of things tend to bring the community together, and my feeling is that it's one of the positives of living in a rural community, in a smaller community, is somebody is not just a face in the crowd. They're a neighbor, they're a friend, and one of the things the congressman was asking me as we were walking around Greenwood was about do I have people I know that are directly impacted this, since I'm a Canisteo Village resident, and I was talking about some of my neighbors whose relatives live in the area that were impacted, and that's it's a tough situation we're dealing with, but it's a situation that we are built as far as the culture of rural communities to come together and deal with. And I think you've already seen that over the last 3 days.
We've been running sound bites in our newscast of Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard saying that the swift boat crews and the sheriff's department boating crews saved over 40 people who were in homes and maybe other situations too. But the impression I had was that these boats prevented a lot of drowning situations. And then you had Steuben County Emergency Services and Public Safety Director Tim Marshall. He was everywhere for the last few days. Somebody asked Marshall at one point while we were touring the damaged sites, I believe it was in Greenwood, that they asked the question, how much sleep have you gotten lately? And Tim said in the last 48 hours, I think a total of 7 or 8 hours of sleep. The workers out there are doing a tremendous job.
Yeah, I mean, I've been impressed with how quickly, roads have been reopened, how quickly crews have gotten to the various locations, especially since you're dealing with, in some cases, kind of remote areas that are just not like there's a lot of alternative roads to get there. There's only so many roads from here to there, and that has gone very well. And like I said, everything I've heard about the emergency response directly that day has been very positive. And what was particularly important, and you mentioned the rising water, is how fast the water rose and fell, right? So you were talking about, it wasn't like the water slowly crept up and you had time to sort of pack up your belongings and go. It was truly, in some cases, in some places, a flash flood with emphasis on flash. I think you saw that, what I saw in my own eyes was the situation in the village. That just happens to be where I live. And you saw the water rise very quickly on Venice Creek and then go back down. And I think that surge happened in a lot of other places, but it didn't happen at the same time in every place. I was first hearing about people who were stuck in homes in the Cameron area, and down County Route 119 there. And that was hours before you were hearing about situations in Willow Bend or situations in Jasper. So it was a moving thing over the course of the day, and at any particular time you had folks that might have been very quickly going from a safe situation to an unsafe situation, and the sheriff's office, the emergency response folks, the volunteer fire members, having to respond very quickly, and it seems like they did so in a very admirable fashion.
Steuben County Republican Chair, Canisteo resident, he wears so many hats, Joe Sempolinski. Is there anything I did not ask you that you wanted to bring up?
Well, again, I'm so proud to be a resident of Canisteo. This is where I've chosen to raise my children. It's a wonderful community, and I am very confident that Canisteo, Greenwood, Jasper, Woodhull, all of the communities that have been impacted this throughout the state are are going to come back even stronger than they were before, and it's because of the people that live in those communities and call them home. In many cases, extended families, multi-generational occupancy of this community, and we're going to be strong. We're going to be resilient, and I know that from my own perspective, this is my home. This is where I live, and in whatever role I'm serving, I will do everything in my power to make sure that these communities have the resources they need to maximize that resiliency.
Joe Sempolinski, cannot thank you enough for joining us. Know it's been a busy weekend for you. You were on the phone all Friday with the Steuben County, with the state Republicans, keeping tabs on everything, talking to everyone from Senator O'Mara to Assemblyman Palmisano, Assemblyman Giglio, and the rest. I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning, Joe Sempolinski.
Well, thanks for taking the time to come around with us yesterday, and I know it's been a busy, rough weekend for the station as well, dealing with the storm and then also trying to cover the storm. And so you're a crucial part of making sure people have the information in the Hornell area, and I thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Joe Sempolinski.